Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the video. So the major market volatility continued last week, and in this video we'll be going over what to expect next from the stock market and Bitcoin, what needs to happen for this pullback to end, and what can trigger further downside, as well as going over 6 different individual stock trade ideas for the week and weeks ahead. As always, there are timestamps in the description. Let's go ahead and get into it. So starting out by taking a look at the S&P 500 with the SPY chart. Last week we went over how the 50-day moving average is a major pivot point for the market, as it had not had a daily candle close below it since April of this year, and we went over how a close below it would be that trigger for a larger pullback. And then on Monday, the S&P closed below it, triggering that deeper pullback and next leg lower for the market. The 50-day moving average is at 669.15 in the next week, and will continue to be a major pivot in both directions. So now zooming into the chart, and I have the 50-day moving average marked with that blue line. So Monday had to break below the 50-day, which started that deeper pullback, and on Tuesday and Wednesday it built out a new trading range between 657 and 659.1 to 659.5 as new supports, and below 664 to 664.89 and 666.5 to 667.34 as new resistance. And then Thursday was the major move, as the market had a large gap up after Nvidia's great earnings report. It opened back above the 50-day moving average, and then the 672.68 to 673 key zone, which acted as new initial support and built out a small consolidation above there before breaking below 672.68, the 50-day moving average, and then those other key levels as well, with pretty much an all-day sell. So now this was a pretty major warning sign, as when stocks sell off on good news such as those Nvidia earnings, it's a very signal of more likely pain is needed. But really what we need to ask from here, is that sell-off more due to a momentum trade unwind and liquidations, or is it due to genuine concern about an AI slowdown and a possible cycle top? Now my personal thought is that I do not think we're anywhere close to being in a bubble, but there is a valuation argument and then of course a technical argument. Overall, I would not be surprised if the market sees a deeper pullback or a full correction, which is 10% down from highs, but I do think that this drop will end up being a great buying opportunity when we look back in just a few months. So now what to expect into next week. The biggest supports on the downside from here are at 657, 652.2, and 649.5 to 650. 649.5 to 650 is the biggest support next week, and this will be a must-hold level for buyers to avoid further downside, where below there would trigger the larger downside move. And on the upside, key resistance levels are at 664 to 664.89, 666.5 to 667.34, and the 50-day moving average at 669.15. A reclaim and hold above the 50-day is what would end this market downtrend from here, and would be that trigger for the larger rally higher on a successful reclaim and hold, but it would be important to reclaim it and then hold it as new support in order to validate that move, or else there's always risk of fake outs, such as what we saw on Thursday of this past week. So now taking a look at Bitcoin, we saw a major breakdown and sell last week as well, after it broke down from the cluster of supports that we went over in last week's video, which were at 94,300 and 90,750 to 92,000, along with the trend line. Now this was the trigger for the larger breakdown move, and it sold all the way down to near $80,000 before finding support for a bounce. So now what to watch for into next week is I would now watch 80 to 81,000 as a new support zone. If it breaks the new lows below there, the next major supports are at 77,000 and then 72,000 to 73,800, which was the top of that almost 1 year long consolidation base previously, and the breakout point of that consolidation was when Trump was elected. So that is a very major area of support and would be very high odds for a bounce if it was to get tested. And due to the size and the speed of the sell, Bitcoin has now gotten heavily oversold. So as I'm filming this, Bitcoin is trading in the 83,000s and has a daily RSI of 22. This shows that it is heavily oversold, and I mark each time on the chart that it's been this oversold. As you can see, each one has happened before a large bounce and rally, and was near the bottom or the swing low of the trend. So what does this tell us into next week? It tells us that there is very strong odds for a bounce very soon. That does not mean it can't go lower afterwards, though a good sized bounce is very likely very soon. Now getting into the individual stock trade ideas that I'm watching in the week and weeks ahead, we'll be going over 2 different sections with this. First will be the heavily oversold mega caps, and second will be the stocks showing high relative strength. I'll be going over how to trade these and the key levels to watch. So starting out by taking a look at the oversold mega caps, and each of these 3 stocks have in common of being heavily oversold and near some major supports. So I think that these stocks make for great buy and holds, and you can also have confidence in buying and holding these long term because they're cash flow machines and they will always continue to make new highs in the future. The question is just when. Or they can also make for a great short-term trade setup where you can keep risk low and tight. And I'll be going over these more quick than usual since we do have a good amount of setups to get on through. So first up is Metastock, ticker symbol META. We've been going over this as being heavily oversold for the past couple weeks, and last week it held up relatively well versus the market. It only closed down about 2% for the week and has built out a consolidation base. And it's also nearing a test of the multi-year uptrend line, which lines up at about 675 next week, and that can be an area to have your stop loss below if that breaks. I'm not going to be going over all the levels, but a break and hold above 600 to 601.2 can be the upside trigger to target those further levels above. Amazon is next, as it pulled all the way back to below where it was before reporting great earnings last quarter, and on Friday it came within a few cents of testing the 200-day moving average, which is at 214.7, and that can be the risk and stop loss level into next week. And zooming into the chart, 218 is also a key support, and 222.7 will be the key upside pivot to watch into next week. This was the closing level pre-earnings, and the stock respected it as a major pivot all of last week. A break and hold above it triggers a rally to target those next levels marked above. And Microsoft is the last mega cap that I'll be going over. And this is probably the most simple setup, though the one that I'd have the lowest conviction with overall, due to showing the most weakness to end last week. So essentially, the stock broke below the 493 key support and has sold down to test the next major level, which is at the 2024 high at 468.35, along with the 200-day moving average, which is at 466.57. So 466.57 to 468.35 is the key cluster of support that needs to hold for a rally back up to take place. And doing so can target a move back to 480, then 493 plus. Breaking below the 200-day moving average would be the trigger for a larger pullback for the stock. And now taking a quick look at some high relative strength stocks. So what this means is these are the stocks that have held up very well during the market downtrends, and stocks that show this type of characteristic during those market downtrends, pullbacks, or corrections will often be the ones to break out and explode higher when the market bottoms and reverses back up. First up is Bionics, ticker symbol BBNX. And this stock is breaking out of its IPO base and broke out higher on Friday, triggered above 30.4. So moving forward, if it holds above 30.4, it can see immediate larger upside, or if it pulls back, then 26 to 26.65 and 24.5 would be those biggest dip buy levels of interest. And Gigacloud Technology, ticker symbol GCT, is also a stock that showed major strength last week and is attempting to break out of its more than 3-month long consolidation base on Friday. 34.45 is the breakout trigger, so if it's able to hold above there, it can target a move higher to 38.1 and 43.5 next above. And then Revolve Group, ticker symbol RVLV, is another stock that has held up very well during the market volatility. On Friday, it closed back above both major moving averages and is testing the top of the 8-month long consolidation range at 24 to 24.81. Holding above the moving averages keeps direct upside in play, and above 24 to 24.81 triggers the breakout, which can then target 26.2 and 28.1 to 28.85 next above. So that is everything that I'm watching for into next week. As we talk about, market volatility equals opportunity, and that is shown with all the setups that we went over, with some great opportunities into the week and weeks ahead. Thank you guys for watching, and for anybody interested in joining the private Discord chat, that is the first link down in the description to get my personal trade alerts, nightly watch lists, and answer any questions you guys have in there. Good luck trading the week ahead, and I'll catch you all next time, and peace out.